Hey everybody, this is Sean Riley with Riley Real Estate and MassHomesale.com with this week's Q&A Saturday video. This week we're going to talk a little bit about rental properties and financing. I've seen some people talking about trying to get their equity out of certain properties. So the question is, can I do a cash out refinance of my rental property? The quick answer is yes, usually you can. That comes with the caveat of there are a lot of requirements and things that need to happen in order for this to come about. First of all, we're going to make a distinction between commercial loans and residential loans. Commercial loans, those are generally going to be easier to get because you don't have as much regulation and guidelines that have to be followed, but they're generally not as good a product either. So these are not the 30-year fixed-rate mortgages that you see advertised at really good rates. These are generally 5, 7, 10-year loans, generally have a balloon payment at the end, can't get a loan for more than usually 70% of the value, the rates are going to be higher, like all that kind of stuff. So talking specifically about non-owner occupied residential mortgages. So a residential mortgage, those are the ones you typically you're seeing advertised. You're seeing your under 3% 30-year fixed type stuff. You don't get those. That's exact thing on rental properties. Generally, you can get 30-year fixed, but you generally have to pay a little bit higher rate. You do have higher down payment requirements and all that kind of stuff too. But that's kind of beside the point. To do a cash out refinance, first of all, you have to qualify for the mortgage. So you have to qualify the same way you have to qualify for any other purchase mortgage or refinancing without cash out or just for your own personal mortgage. So that's the first and foremost. So assuming that you would be able to do that, there are a couple situations where you just still won't be able to do it. First of all, under most guidelines, you're not going to be able to get a cash out refinance if you have 5 or more mortgages in your name. So if you have already kind of maxed out the low level of mortgages that you can get without going to that sort of next tier, 5 to 10, that's some places will let you get for residential mortgages, you're already going to have a hard time getting a cash out. The other is, I'm totally drawing a blank right now. The other big thing is there's generally a seasoning requirement. I'm sorry. So the other thing is that generally for a residential mortgage, it has to be in your name. So if you buy a property in the name of a company, which people like to do sometimes for liability purposes when you have a rental property, it's much more difficult to be able to do that. Again, you probably have to go the commercial route. You're not going to be able to get a residential mortgage. The other thing I was just about to started to say was there is generally a seasoning requirement, which generally means you have to own the property for at least 6 to 12 months. At least 6 months. Some places will have additional requirements. They want it to be more like 12 months to be able to do a cash out refinance. So the problem with that is what a lot of people do. This is much more common in other parts of the country where property values are less, but it's still something people like to try to do in Massachusetts and New Hampshire and other higher priced markets, is you buy a property with cash and you do the repairs, and then you significantly increase the value, and then you try to refinance it to get your money out so you can do it again. The problem is, so first of all, you can't get cash out in less than 6 months generally. There are some odd products in certain situations where there's things you can do, but there's a lot of restrictions that are not very common. So generally you need at least 6 months. Some banks will have longer requirements than that beyond those sort of base requirements that you would see from Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So the problem is, just taking some simple numbers, and numbers that you could do around here in a lower priced town, or a lower end property in a slightly less expensive town. Say you bought a property that needed a lot of work for $100,000 cash, and then you did $50,000 worth of repairs, and then you brought the value up, it appraised for $200,000. So that's great. you forced $50,000 of equity beyond what your purchase plus your repairs were. So that's awesome. Unfortunately, a lot of times when you do try to do the cash out refinance, first you have to wait 6 months, and if you try to do it right at 6 months, a lot of banks will only lend you 70% of your purchase price. So you get 70% of that first $100,000 or $70,000, which, that's great. You were able to get that out, so you have that money to work with to do something else. But you put $150,000 into it, so you still have $80,000 tied up in that property. So if you want to do it again, you have to find another $80,000 to be able to do the exact same deal again. If you wait so the longer you wait, the more likely you can get more out. So if you wait that full 12 months or even longer, they're going to be more likely to let you use the new appraised value, but then again, you have to keep the money tied up for a lot longer. So there's issues both directions, or in both situations as far as that goes. So that's really the big thing, is just your general eligibility to be able to qualify for the mortgage, and then the seasoning requirements and the number of mortgage requirements and all those sort of things. So that's kind of where it gets to be difficult sometimes. So if your idea is you would rather build a rental portfolio, you have to deal with these kind of issues. There's limited cash. It's hard to refinance the properties. And then, as we know in the video we did a while back on the true cost of rehabbing a house, that $100,000 you paid plus your $50,000 of repairs, that $50,000 spread, if you go to sell it, that's not what you get. You actually get significantly less than that. So then the choice for the investor is, do I want to go through the hassle and try to refinance the thing and possibly have a lot of capital tied up in the place? Do I want to cash out, get all my money back, but have a fairly small profit, don't have the property anymore, have to pay high taxes on the profit that I do end up getting? So it's not clear cut. Unless you just have one strategy that you want to do, and then that obviously makes things easier. But things are always complicated, and things can be difficult. But the long and short of it is possible to do cash out refinances on rental properties, but it's not easy. It's just never easy to qualify for a mortgage anyway, because there's always a lot of paperwork and a lot of hassle that you have to go through. But even when you get through all that, there are still a lot of issues that make these particular loans a lot harder to do. So anyway, if you have any questions or comments, put them below. And as always, if you have a question you'd like to see answered in a future video, you can put a comment below, fill out a form on the website, put it on our Facebook page or Twitter account, or send an email to info@masshomesale.com. Hope to hear from you guys with new questions, and until then, I will see you next week. All right, bye-bye.